Can you guys hear back there? Welcome, everybody. We're having trouble with sound, and I'm hoping it's going to work. I don't know. We might have to use a microphone. When I do multimedia, I like to have music. How many of you guys have watched presentations with or without music? Huge difference. All right, how many of you guys accessed my website? It's Google Sites. It's called, there's a link in Schoology. How many of you guys accessed that link? All right, if you don't know how to get there, I actually probably wouldn't encourage you guys to be on the computers right now because I'm going to be demonstrating tons of stuff for you. So I'm going to have a lot of resources I'm going to share that my students have done and how we've used Google in the classroom. This is not where you're going to do hands-on and learn Google Sites. What I did is when I got Google trained, I basically went home and went on YouTube and trained myself as much as possible. And then I turned around and created my own videos, and I've provided them as a source for you to go home and go through the steps to make your own sites from scratch. Now, you guys could, how many of you guys have made Google Sites before? How many of you guys feel really like an expert? Good, look at those experts. Okay, after you go through my site, you will become an expert, in my opinion. But as you can see on the home, there's the agenda. And I'm going to go through the agenda and start showing some examples of how I've used it with my students. So are you guys ready? I don't think we're going to have sound, are we? So I'm going to show this first video before we get started. And it basically shows an example of all the sites that I've created using Google. I use it to make workshops. I use it for collaboration with my students. And just tons of resources for teachers. Whenever I go to a workshop, I make a website, and I start just adding constantly to those websites for teachers to use and for myself. So there's an example. I'm going to go ahead and go through the agenda. If you want to know how to get here, you would type in kidsnetsoft.com. This is my classroom site that I made over 10 years ago. I didn't use Google Sites back then. Google Sites were not that great back then, so I used FrontPage and Dreamweaver. And the disadvantage of this, using this tool, is I have to upload it through an FTP. And I just recently tried to upload my website, and I got an error, so I have to go and explore why I'm not able to do it. With Google Sites, it's awesome, because you could just change it on the fly. You guys, if you got Google Sites right now, you could be adding resources as I'm talking to you. It's really wonderful. So this is my classroom website. Kids will go here. I'm just going to show you this if you want to come and explore this website on your time. I have a cool sites where my students go, and there's a lot of really fun sources. This is for kids that are way ahead in the classroom, and they have like 5 minutes to spare, and no kids need help, or they don't, and they're fast typers. They can come here and go to these websites. They're a lot of fun, and they're educational. And this is where I send my students. They go here to KidsNetSoft. You see the Google Sites in the pink section. That's where you're going to go to get to my sources. So we'll go to Google Sites. And I haven't been able to update this page because I have to FTP it and figure that out. Where you would go, in this case, it's called Google Site Tips. So this is the resource page you would use to go home and teach yourself. All of these are videos. The getting started, these are all videos that I made that you guys can sit down and watch and get started. Now, a lot of people like to use templates. I don't like templates. For those of you guys that do Google Sites, how many of you use the templates? I just don't like them. I like to have control. I like to also explore design and customization and all that good stuff. So all my videos teach you how to build it from scratch. So those are all videos. So I'm not going to show these, but you know where to go to get them. If you go to the agenda page on here when you're at home, I'm going to go ahead and get started. How many of you guys filled out a survey again? I sent out a survey, and this is what's really cool, is I created a survey, and I embedded it to Google Form, and then I gathered information. If you were to go here and add information, I also added another page. So I'll go back to the agenda page here and click on results. Now these are results from last year. I presented at the Google conference last year, but this is feedback from last year. And then if I scroll down, it shows it's stamp dated. And I can scroll down and see what people wrote from this session. And I'm really excited because based on a lot of the feedback, I realized, hey, this session's going to work for a lot of the people saying what they wanted from this session. There is a video that talks about doing forms. So you can do it at your own pace. So that's a really nice option for you. So let's go back to the agenda page. And as I mentioned earlier, I used to use, when I first started doing classroom sites with my students, I had to do web design because that's my passion. All I had available at the time was Word. And it was like we were using Microsoft Word. Now this is front page, so we got front page. Now we no longer use front page, we use Google Sites. This is my main classroom website. I showed you guys that. And I'm going to show you some examples. These are all Google Sites that I've created, a lot of online workshops. Does anyone do image editing with their students? So I have a resource that's fabulous. We have Photoshop, but students like to go home and play, and they can't afford Photoshop. So there's a Pixlr unit that I put together. And this is an outstanding unit that my students use. They go home and they play with it because it's free. And these are all the videos, how-to videos. And here's an example of the gallery. You guys might want to just do this for fun. It's the twin effect. I did that with the art teacher. And then transforming animals. The students love that. So if you have students that are bored in the classroom, send them to do some of this stuff because it's free. So removing objects, and then so those are examples. Adding a tattoo, and there you have it. So I'll go ahead and go through the ones that are related. This is the 8th grade unit that I do. And what happens is the kids will build their sites, and I'll add their links here. That's an example. So 8th graders, I'm going to go into depth about what they do for the 8th grade unit because it's very creative. This is a unit that I put together on technology in schools. Anytime I come across something really interesting, I will go ahead, if it's a video, I'll go ahead and add it to the video page. So this is something I made available for teachers. It has a lot of really neat stuff and neat ideas for the classroom. I don't know if you noticed I brought my book. I wrote a book and I'm self-published. So the deal is, it's really tough that you have to publish it and you have to sell it yourself. So I made a website to have an online presence that way. If you do buy my book today, it's only $20. It's normally $24.95. And you get invited to, I think, 3 to 4 Google sessions that are private. You could make a Google session private and invite people. So that's what happens. I'm trying to make you guys interested in buying this fabulous book. I'm not going to go into depth about these because I am teaching online workshops and more tomorrow. So we're going to go more into depth with some of those. But this is a class I taught through the district, and I invited teachers to come and participate. It's an online workshop, very user-friendly. If they go to the schedule and go at their own pace, they will have an end final product. They actually put together a Google site in this session. That's part of the whole unit. And what they do is they showcase before and after. And they also use PowerPoint. So they're using PowerPoint, Google Sites, and an image editor. This is one of my favorite units. How many of you guys are interested in online safety and cyberbullying and all that? Okay, so I've been really tweaking this unit for quite some time. This unit did get published in EdTech, that's why I put it there. But I've been working this unit, and I finally came up with an idea because I wanted to incorporate video and classroom participation. So I actually used Google Forms for this unit. I'll show you how I did that. If you go to the alternative lesson here at the bottom, students, what their job is to do is they're going to do research about various topics on cyberbullying and so forth, and they have to come up with some short and sweet phrases dealing with empowering students so they can deal with bullying, because we know it's not going away. So we try to give the kids the tools so they can be more successful if they're ever in that situation. So I'm going to show you an example. So what I did is kids had to brainstorm quick phrases. How many of you guys have used Animoto before? I use Animoto so much. I think it's so awesome. So they had to come up with these powerful phrases, and then they had to go out and videotape in the hallway and what have you. I found they ended up being more violent than anything, so we had to regroup, say, okay, can we do something other than pushing kids on the floor? So this is the final product of what they created, but before I do show it to you, I wanted you to see what they did in the process. So down below, you can see these are some of the examples of how you could set up an Animoto. You're limited to the characters. So what they did is they went, and I gave them a Google form, and they submitted as a group of 2 or so. So I gave them the form, they filled it out, and then on the site, it's updated after they fill it out. And here's an example of the feedback that the students came up with. So this is what's really nice, is then the students came back, and they had to do so many scenes. And then they came in here, and they picked the ones, they didn't necessarily pick theirs. This is the sharing part, the collaboration piece. So they come and pick the ones they wanted to videotape. So they came out really good. I'm so proud of these guys. So what I did is I took bits and pieces of their video and then put it so I could get each group and show it. I showed it at an all-school assembly, and it turned out really well. Animoto is so awesome. So there's that unit. Are there any questions so far? So what they would do is they would pick the lines that they wanted to visually represent, and then they would go videotape it. This is my classroom site. You saw my other classroom site, but I made a Google Classroom site. So I'm going to showcase what my students do in the classroom using Google. A lot of this other stuff you might want to look at. You can use those resources as well, like how to make posters and that type of stuff. So we'll look at the 6th and 7th grade curriculum. I only have them for a quarter. So I'll go ahead and click on their page. These are some of the things that we do. Here's an example of a collaborative unit that we do with a story. And this is really a fun unit. So what happens, what I used to do is I'd give each student a story written at a very low level, and then I showed them how to use Word to determine how high their level is. So for example, if they make changes, make the sentences longer, small words larger, and so forth, the level's going to go higher. And I thought, well, geez, why don't I turn this into a Google Doc situation? So my 7th graders get this story that's written at this low level. So a 7th grader will get the story, and then they'll invite 2 6th graders from 2 different classes. And there's videos in there that will walk you guys through that if you want to do it. It's really a fun unit. But let me give you some frustrations with my students. What the student does is they change a word and they have to color coordinate it. So 7th graders might change the word to a dark red. The next group of sixth graders might change their word to dark green. So every time they change a word, they have to change it. So a sixth grader might come in and take the seventh grader's word and change it. And they get frustrated. I said, hey, it's okay if the word's better. And of course, they would argue, well, my word's better. But they get a little offended. But it's kind of fun to see that it's very dynamic, it's very fun, and they end up having a really good time doing this unit. Any questions about doing this? All the resources are there if you want to go do this unit with your students. Highly recommend it to build, to increase their writing. See, I'm a computer teacher, but I constantly incorporate literacy in my classroom. Mostly, I think language arts is probably the easiest one to do. All right, here we go. Let's move on. That's one thing. This is a really fun unit I do with my seventh graders. And the beauty of putting it on a website is I put all my tools on the site, and they can go home and watch the videos. Now, YouTube is blocked in our schools. So I give the videos to the students to watch from a public drive. But if they go home, the videos are there. They probably don't have YouTube blocked, is most likely. So they can go to the online class. There's the videos that they watch. If you wanted to do these sessions with your kids, with yourselves, or whatever, this walks them through. These are all the resources they use for the unit. So there's a rubric, a write-up. They do some audio stories that they record, and they make a Voki with it. So you can look at Vokis as well. So I'll show you an example. So what the students do is they go to the showcase page. Let's say they're quarter 1, period 5. Now I blocked it because the deal is when you invite your students, and if you make it live so anyone can see it, the students' names, if they start adding comments, their full name pops up. And for their safety, that's why I block it. But I'm going to show you a student example. So what they would do is they would go to a page, and I have student 1, student 2, student 3, and so forth, and I make a page that's beautiful. Are you guys following me right now? I'll show you. Here's an example of a student page. I guess I could log in so you can see it. What they do is they create a creature on a site called Switch Zoo. I've been using that site for 10 years. It's fabulous. If you want to get into creative writing with your students, middle or elementary and middle school kids would love this. You generate a creature, and they turn it into an image, and they add it to their website, and then they have to write a creative writing piece about this animal that incorporates fact with fiction. Then they have to write another story, and I'll go ahead and play the student's Voki.
On September 8th, 2011, a strange animal was seen in the forest near Fort Carson in Colorado. The creatures seemed to be a mixture of a bison, African lion, Kodak brown bear, and Arctic wolf. At first, the local police did not believe these claims, but large wolf scratches were found on cars and buildings. People started to panic, and the National Guard was called in to find the animal.
So afterwards, what's really cool is when the kids are done, well, most of them are done. I try to make it so that everyone can have success, but not all kids finish in time. What happens is the kids are given 3 students, and they use the rubric, and they go through, and they have to read it and look at all the specs that make it a good web page, and then they provide constructive and positive feedback to their peers. And the kids get really upset if they don't get feedback. They're like, hey, I didn't get feedback. So they really look forward to seeing that feedback, which is really neat. When I do student 1, student 2, then of course, when I have the classroom of students, I change it to their names. They come in, they click on their name, and they add their stuff. But the beauty of Google Sites is we could go into revision history and determine who did what. When I had kids go in and grade their peers, they would go to their pages, and they would accidentally delete someone's page. So let's say I go in and accidentally delete her page. So I go to edit mode, click on the pencil. Let's just say I put, you are a jerk, and I save it. So the kid comes, oh, Miss Clementi, someone wrote this on my page. So I go to more, revision history, and it shows, if you look at that version, it shows my name. So obviously I'm going to go back to version 15 or 16 or whatever that is, and I'm going to revert back to that. Some kids actually deleted a whole page. I'm like, oh, they were panicking. I'm like, I thought it was cute how they're panicking because I knew how to save it. All right, so any questions so far? You guys are a great audience, by the way. So that's how I use it with my 6th and 7th graders. Oh, by the way, if you're interested, and I'm going to talk about this tomorrow at my online workshops, this PowerPoint online class, it's really good on design for building a PowerPoint. So that's going to be tomorrow, but it does give you guys videos, how-to videos. All right, here's with 7th graders. I have an advanced 7th grade class, and how we used Google Sites in that class is I made a Google website. I invite them, and there are videos that show how to share your site. You want to share them as editors and not owners. You can also just share them as viewers. You don't want them to do anything. But if you share them as an owner, they can do all kinds of damage. So for example, see my color scheme? I don't want them to touch my color scheme. They can't as an editor, but as an owner, they could. So what the students do, here's an example. I'm going to show you an example. So here's an example of how they embed a blog on a website. Here's the 8th grade curriculum. Here's an example of what they can create. Keep in mind that I've been building this over several years. Since I learned Google, this is what I've been doing. They don't have to do this much. And what I do is I give them several options, because a lot of my students don't like to write. I'd love them to write, but I give them tons of options so that they can build their site and add, if they want to add movies, they can add movies. So here's an example of adding an animated video about art in my imaginary country, because they get to make a website on an imaginary country, museum, or business. And if they don't like those choices, they're welcome to choose another choice.
Take my picture down, put it anywhere you choose. There's so much more to say, you tell me that it's nothing new. What's been done, what's been said, it's all been said.
How many of you guys know how to look up a copyright-friendly image on the internet? So if you're going to be putting out websites, you need to abide to the copyright rules. So let's say you're looking for a dog for your website. So I'll go do image search. You go over here. I don't know if you can see the options. Looks like a little wheel. If you click on that and choose advanced search and scroll down under usage rights, you would say free to share or modify. I choose modify because I want them to be able to modify it, possibly in an image editor. And now you should be relatively safe finding images. So there's an example of what they can do to their websites. They could also embed a blog. So I embedded a music blog, Music of Guaca, my country, and I added some sound and some video on the blog. I also gave them the option to get feedback, to embed a Google form if they wanted. I think they would get a kick on getting feedback in their spreadsheet, on their Google form, to see what students are saying. Hopefully they're appropriate, because if it's anonymous, if the kids have to log in though, then the kids are going to know who wrote what. Events, they have the option to do a publisher. So they could go in and add some really cool images in a publisher and then save it as a JPEG and then embed it on their website. So again, kids that, I want to give them options other than writing. No offense to language arts, but because I would prefer them all be writers, but they're not. So they do have to do some writing though. And then this one is really fun. A creative way to do tourists. These are my tourists, and I'm afraid you're not going to be able to hear them. And the kids, they go out and they interview teachers or students, and then they put together this.
The beaches are the most pristine I have ever seen.
I loved hiking the Guaca Falls. I love the unique and crazy animals that come to visit you in your hotel.
4 of the computer teachers from different middle schools got together and shared some really cool stuff of what they do with their students. And one of the teachers does photography and film. And I'm like, I want to do photography and film. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to perfect this website. It's not quite done. And then I'm going to invite my students to the site. And I'm going to show you how they're going to contribute their work to this website. So what's going to happen is, let's say we do the photography unit. On this page, it has a variety of photography terms. And so, for example, let's say we do framing. So I'll introduce the concept of framing in photography. Then they'll go out and take quite a few shots, come back into the classroom, and then they're going to pick their favorite photograph. And they might look at the gallery of examples. So they'll look at the examples so they understand what is meant by framing. Because I think they really need to see the visuals. It's one thing to see the words, but a picture's worth 1,000 words. Then they come back, they follow my videos, because they have to go by certain specs, because I have expectations for what it should look like. So the videos walk them through cropping and all that good stuff. And then another video walks them through, there's a video that will tell them how to add it to the site. So then what they're going to do, should I pick a fun example? I tried to add examples. They're going to click on background, for example, and they're going to add their image. So this is my image of background. Isn't it cute? So they have to set it up to where when you click on the image, it opens in a new window. Because I just created thumbnails. And in web design, if you know about web design, when they close that, your website needs to still be there. So the video shows them how to set that up. So they're going to showcase their work, and then kids are going to come through and add comments. Because they're invited, they can add comments. You can't add comments because you're not invited. So that's why I like to invite them, and they can add their work. Here's an example of film. And one of the actors is in the room, and if you want his autograph later, he'll be happy to do that. So they learn these concepts. They'll learn the concepts. They'll go out and do the filming, and then they'll come back and add their examples. The reason that it has to be a short video is because I'm inviting quite a few kids to this one website, because you're allowed so many gigs per site. So that's why it's got to be short and sweet. They can't be putting a 3-minute video on there. Because what they do is they add it to the Google Drive, and then they embed it as a video on the page. And again, my videos are out there if you want to learn how to do that. Everything that I'm demonstrating has a video. This is a lot of information in 1 hour, isn't it? By the way, on my classroom site, on the 8th graders, I don't know if you can see that drop-down arrow. I did a really neat thing. This might be changing the subject a bit. One of the best projects I've ever done, and I just did it this year, was I gave the kids a choice. I gave them a choice to do whatever unit they wanted. So there was buy-in for these guys. And almost every single kid was really engaged, and they surprised me with what they came up with. I was like, wow. So it was pretty exciting. One of the options is actually a Google Site Portfolio. And I'll show you my example, because I know we're going more and more towards portfolios. This is an example as if I were a middle school kid at Mountain Ridge Middle School through 6th through 7th grade. And these are some of the projects that they do. So they would convert their Word document to a JPEG and embed it on their page. A PowerPoint is a video. By the way, there's some videos on how to do that too. And then the web page that they create, and what the 7th graders do, the blog and so forth. And the 8th graders make movies, Photoshop, and so forth. They also do this, which is a quotes. I'm going to throw this in there because this is a unit that's actually private. If you do buy my book for $20, you get invited to this session. And this is the whole visual literacy piece. Right, so that's really a popular unit. There's another, this is a cute one. They do a PowerPoint and they get an image and they add funny quotes to it. So they really like that one. So I think, are we out of time, everybody? Or? Well, thank you very much. Enjoyed having you guys.